I don't go to the movies too often, but one particular movie that stands out in mind was with Betty Davis. I think it was Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte. I got kind of a charge when that head come rolling down the stairs.
Anybody who tells me that they go out there to have fun playing football, they're a liar. Because this game isn't fun. This game is a war.
I really just don't like violence, but, you know, sometimes, you know, they hit that switch.
I'm vicious, no doubt about it. I play the game in a vicious manner. I'm not out there to hurt anyone.
It's physical, and that's the way it should be. You know, this is not golf or tennis, you know. We're talking football here.
From hallowed Hall of Famers like Dick Butkus to the contemporary hitmen in the NFL today, the assignment has been constant. Search and destroy. Disrupt opposing game plans until they're shredded into pieces. Achieve victory through dominating defense.
Hi, I'm Harry Carson. As a former linebacker for the New York Giants, I'm very familiar with the phrase, search and destroy. Over my long career, I saw not only some of the greatest defenders in the National Football League's history, but also some of the greatest defenses. They were merchants of menace, strike forces that had one thing in common, the ability to shrink the field and alter offensive game plans. In 1981, such a man became my teammate on the New York Giants.
He is, without question, the most dominating player that we've seen on defense. I've never seen anybody as big as he is, as fast as he is, and as relentless as he is.
Yeah, he's relentless. He has a motor that never goes off. He plays the game 1,000 miles an hour, and he's really the most prolific football player that we have to face year in and year out.
Phenomenal blitzer. He comes from everywhere all the time. When he hits you have to take inventory. You have to see if everything's still hooked up, and you know, you get up and you start shaking and you make sure your legs are there, your arms are there, and everything else, and hopefully he doesn't get there too often during the course of a game.
Number 56 usually gets to the quarterback with ease. And throughout his 9-year career, stopping LT has posed unique problems for offensive linemen.
As Comrade Dover said, you hold them, then you leg whip them. If that doesn't work, then you tackle them.
I feel it's an honor anytime a team has to reconstruct their offense or do different things and to block me or to take care of me.
Taylor gets off the snap so quickly, he often seems guided to the ball by something other than sight or sound. Whether opponents run away from him or right at him. At game's end, his breath usually smells like halfbacks. Beyond his physical gifts, he has the extraordinary ability to concentrate, to harness great mental power to accomplish what he wants to do.
I know Lawrence Taylor very well. He's as a catalyst. He can provide a lot of things to a team. He told me before the season what he was going to do. So I really didn't make any prediction. I knew what he was going to do because he told me.
In 1986, Taylor proved to be as much a prophet as a predator, leading the league with 20.5 quarterback sacks.
I'm not a very technique-oriented person anyway as far as playing my position. You never know exactly what you're going to do until the last instant before the ball is snapped. And then that's where creativity comes in. I tell you, I can go in and run some stunts that they never even heard of, but if it works, I keep running it. I still rely a lot on instinct, on feel. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, I'm in trouble.
Taylor's willingness to take chances only adds to his enjoyment of the game.
This year, I'm just having a lot of fun. You know, there's no, no media hassles, no problems. I'm just having a good time.
Hey, baby, let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs and have some fun.
I gotta do better than this.
The more threatened he feels, the more competitive he becomes. He thinks that he can will anything to happen on the field.
I love showing my enthusiasm for the game. When I first came here to the Giants, there's one thing they did not have here was enthusiasm for, big plays. And I do believe every time somebody scores a touchdown on defense, if I'm close to him, I'm going to jump on and, try to wring his neck.
In his first 4 years, Taylor had crossed the goal line only to instigate the Giants' end zone antics, but against the 49ers in 1986, he became the beneficiary of the unbridled zest he had kindled in his teammates. Lawrence Taylor, a true merchant of menace. While others show up for work, he shows up to test his opposition and to find the best in himself.
I played 13 seasons for the New York Giants, 8 of those seasons with Lawrence Taylor. I can personally attest there isn't a more menacing linebacker in the league. Although now that I think about it, the Patriots' Andre Tippett comes in a close second.
Welcome to Foxborough, home of Patriot linebacker Andre Tippett. Enter at your own risk. For in New England resides the AFC's most dominant defensive player, a stop sign to speeding ball carriers, a red light that gives no amber warning. Number 56 attacks from all parts of the field as a right side pass rusher on 1 down. The next play, striking it rich from the left side. Like a football compass, no matter where you put him, he'll point you to the ball carrier.
He might be the most devastating player in the NFL.
Where'd he go? Where'd he go? Where'd he go, D?
He can turn a game around individually, and that's very difficult for a defensive player to do. He shocks you. He is explosive.
He's probably the quickest guy I've ever seen at linebacker, and definitely you have to change your style of offense to compensate for his ability to rush the passer.
What Andre Tippett does best is to take aim at quarterbacks. Hands down and even helmet off, he's virtually unstoppable. With 5 appearances in the Pro Bowl, Andre Tippett is the Patriots' main merchant of menace. In Denver, that honor falls to number 77. Carl Mecklenburg has gone from an unheralded draft pick to a multi-position All-Pro.
I've always been overlooked. I mean, I was a 12th round draft choice coming out of college. I had to walk on in college. So everybody likes to prove people wrong, and I feel like I've proved some people wrong.
Carl's aggressive nature on the field is a stark contrast to his quiet and reserved nature off it. This Clark Kent becomes Superman in a Broncos jersey, a fact he first demonstrated against the Raiders. It was called the hit. And though a star wasn't exactly born on that day, the impact and potential had left its mark on the Broncos staff.
When Carl first came into our training camp, we realized that he had some unusual skills. He was a guy that kind of was in between the speed of a linebacker you like and not quite big enough for a down lineman, yet he could rush the passer like a lineman. He could make tackles like a linebacker, and he could cover the field like a linebacker. So Joe and all the defensive coaches came up with some different schemes to put Carl in that really caused some problems.
Karl Mecklenburg, Denver's multifaceted, hard-hitting merchant of menace.
While Karl Mecklenburg and Andre Tippett are in the prime of their careers, Buffalo's Cornelius Bennett has yet to realize his unlimited potential. Bennett's rise has been so rapid, it's taken him only a season and a half to turn potential into all-pro performance.
I'd say he's in the league with the Tippetts and Lawrence Taylors and people like that. He's an extra special kind of linebacker.
Last year, he was great. He was a surprise of the league. He came in and played well. This year, he's playing great. He's got a great supporting cast with him. I think Cornelius Bennett is only going to get better.
No small compliment when you consider Cornelius Bennett's near-perfect technique.
Cornelius Bennett is a rare individual. He's blessed with great physical qualities, and all of them: speed, strength, flexibility, change of direction, jumping ability. He's got great instincts. He loves the game. He's willing to work hard. He's a coach's dream.
Well, every week I do some different things that I look at on film, and I'm kind of amazed at myself, but I don't have to say my overall speed against the run and against the pass. It's my specialty. I think I surprised some of the guys with my strength also.
If you see Cornelius Bennett walk in the room and were asked to guess how much he weighed, you might say, oh, 190, 195. But yet when he gets on the scale, he's about 235. He's an amazingly well put-together young man. Great body flexibility, and he perceives what's happening around him so well. He's a modest guy. It was all work. He came to play.
In Bennett and number 78, Bruce Smith, the Bills have twin merchants of menace. Perhaps the finest young defenders in all of pro football.
You know, we finished #1 in the AFC in total defense, and I think, the reason why, because we have 11 guys out there playing their hearts out.
But only 2 of them play like Bennett and Smith.
Cornelius Bennett and Bruce Smith are 2 of the brightest new stars in the National Football League. But the Philadelphia Eagles' Reggie White has already ascended to the pinnacle of his profession as the best defensive lineman in the game. Some say this menacing minister may even be the best of all time.
Few defensive players have ever had a better season than number 92, Philadelphia's Reggie White, enjoyed in 1987. With 21 sacks in just 12 games, White was one shy of tying Mark Gastineau's NFL record. Though his talent is immense, this licensed minister gives credit to a higher authority.
To people looking at Reggie White, I want them to see Jesus so that they can maybe come and ask me, hey, what makes you do this? What makes you get past the guy, get to the quarterback? What makes you get 21 sacks in 12 games? I let them know, hey, it's Jesus.
Since joining the Eagles 5 years ago, White has delivered the gospel on Sundays in the form of the big play.
As far as making the big plays when we needed them, they weren't really happening as often as they are now that Reggie's in there. He's made a tremendous impact on our defense.
There was no greater testament to his talent than this astounding play against the Redskins' Doug Williams.
Back goes Doug Williams, head sacked back at the 30. Reggie White comes up with the football. Pulled the ball away and took off for a touchdown. That was almost like magic. His wife Sarah is here and she is probably hysterical.
The first time I met him, we were introduced in a church. And I looked at him, and of course, the normal thing that you think, this guy's big. I knew he had the power. I really did, but I didn't realize there was this much power.
That power, a lot of people would not understand. That's what I have, I feel like, in that edge, that when people see what I do on the field, they can come to me and ask me, where you get the strength? How do you do it? And I can let them know it. You got to put your faith into action.
White's work ethic resulted in a season in which he produced 4 more sacks than the entire Atlanta Falcons team. His coach, Buddy Ryan, calls him the greatest defensive player he's ever seen. White, an accomplished impressionist, obviously earns respect.
No, I tell you, you know my coach, Buddy Ryan, I tell you, he's so ugly. When they cry, tears go down the back of his head, avoid his face, I tell you. Don't cut me for that, Buddy, okay?
He is a player that has to dominate the game. He's the best defensive lineman I've ever been around. With the ability the good Lord gave him is unbelievable.
On the pass rush, I think my best asset is a bull rush. A lot of offensive linemen, they pride in not letting the guy run over. But I've been able to do that in just about every game I've played. Most of the time, bull rushing would take a lot of energy out of me. But I've been blessed enough where it has taken a lot of energy out of me. So that's probably my best asset as a pass rush, is the run over guy. I try to play the game fair, to play it like it needs to be played, and to reach a level that no one else has reached, and that's to be the best at what I do.
While Reggie White is the most feared pass rusher in the game today, Dan Hampton of the Bears is the most complete. Known as Danimal, Hampton, number 99, doesn't have to look hard to find admirers throughout the NFL.
Everybody always looks at how he rushes the passer. That's great, he does. But he plays run so well. He might play the run as good as anybody, any lineman.
And he's capable of dominating a football game. In other words, if you get him in that situation enough and you can't get help on him, then he's going to kind of take over the game.
He's a large human being. You know, he's tall, he's strong, and he's intense. He's a good guy, too, a good old country boy.
Down on his Arkansas farm, Hampton has sown the fruits of his football labors, creating an off-season haven away from the pressures of the game.
I'm kind of proud of this tractor. I like it a whole lot. And a couple years ago when Buddy Ryan came down, he liked my farm and, you know, the horses and the cattle and everything. Boy, but he loved this tractor. He'd had some old tractors. And when he got the job in Philadelphia, he told me, he said, now I can afford one of those tractors like what you got. And that's what he did. He went and bought him a new tractor when he got the new job in Philadelphia. Come on, you bunch of fat cows. Come eat something. See?
Some of Hampton's farm assets must be fed twice a day.
I'm not just a country boy or a cowboy. I just grew up in the country and I like the outdoors. And that's why I like what I'm doing right now. So it's not like this is, you know, I get up and I work from dawn to exhaustion every day.
The heifers hear their master's voice at the feeding trough. But at night, Dan Hampton sings a different kind of tune.
Sweet little thing. She's my pride and joy.
After 11 years in the Windy City, Chicago blues have become a favorite of this rock and roll Danimal.
Actually, I think John Madden brought that up. He called me, he said, well, Randy Wyatt is a manster. This guy could be Danster or something like that. Well, when we got back to Chicago, some reporters told me that. I said, no, I don't want to be Danster. If you want to call me anything, call me Danimal, which is what some of the guys in college called me.
Dan Hampton, he has fingers that, you know, go like this and point out this way and something. I mean, you tell him to make a fist and only about one finger goes down and the other ones stay out. And here's a guy who plays as well as he does and doesn't have a good hand or arm or leg. If he didn't have the injuries that he had, they'd probably have to outlaw football.
I found out how resilient the body is, and that's why I don't really make a lot out of injuries. I know the body will overcome them, and you just got to keep, you know, your attitude up and try the best with what you've got.
Bad hands or not, Dan Hampton has a firm grip on football, his farm, and his future.
As a former player, and I still can't get used to saying that, I can tell you Dan Hampton's ability to play with pain earns him respect around the league. Another who commands respect among his peers was one of the National Football League's best cornerbacks and now is one of its best safeties. It's San Francisco's Ronnie Lott.
Ronnie was considered the best cornerback in football in 1981 and 1982. But he's a big man, and he doesn't have quite the quickness that some of the smaller men do. He was really more of the safety type. And once Ronnie has found himself in that role, he quickly has become the best in football.
I think he found himself a new home. He reads the quarterback very well and studies teams very well, which has been very obvious to us.
Ronnie's become the quarterback for the defense, the signal caller for our defense just prior to the snap of the ball. He's a very dynamic player as far as his hitting ability and in reaction to the ball, and it's had quite an impact on the rest of our defensive players.
I think his greatest strength is just the way he attacks. You know, he's in on every play, and when he comes and cracks one of those wide receivers or something, it just gets me going.
Everybody expected me to be a great free safety, more so than being a great corner. Playing corner was a challenging position for me because I wasn't supposed to play that position. But playing free safety, everybody expected me to be an all-pro, and that was a challenge in itself. I just wanted to make sure that everybody felt that their predictions were true.
You've just had a hard-hitting look at some of the National Football League's most vicious tacklers. Now, let's change our focus from great individual defenders to great team defenses. These clubs have a common thread. They struck quickly, hit hard, and most importantly, they won football games.
Two tight ends! Tight eye left! Tight end off! Robin, get ready to beat a Mike Backer!
It was a defense that was very aggressive, that had the ability to make things happen. People that worked together and worked together very well, and I like to say bounced off of one another, helped one another, inspired one another, had confidence in one another, all of these things that go together to let you unleash everything that you have and perform.
The Steeler defense of the 70s performed with a blend of talent and teamwork unequaled in the history of the NFL.
In one Pro Bowl, we had every member of our defense, with the exception of Ernie Holmes. But the most important thing is that we were playing for one another and not ourselves as individuals. Sometimes it got so tough that I didn't want to pay the price individually. But there was no price I wouldn't pay for the group, so I would go the distance. That was the difference, I think, in our team and some of the other teams that were competing each and every year for the championships.
Pittsburgh Steel Curtain made its mark in Super Bowl IX by completely dominating the game. Tackles Joe Green and Ernie Holmes used looping, stunting, stack-over sets that posed a riddle the Vikings' Fran Tarkington never solved. A bankrupt Viking ground game managed the unbelievable total of only 17 yards. The key player on defense was L.C. Greenwood.
L.C. could have easily been the MVP of the first Super Bowl. If they had picked a defensive MVP, I think it would have been L.C. Greenwood. Because Tarkington liked to roll out, and L.C. was getting upfield and knocked 3 passes down, which is virtually as good as 3 interceptions.
After running Tarkington out of Super Bowl IX, 1 year later in Super Bowl X, the Steel Curtain chased Roger Staubach all over the Orange Bowl. 7 sacks and a second straight Super Bowl title brought national attention to the front four.
We had a front four who put so much pressure on the quarterback that we could sit back here in his own defense and play almost like center field. You knew the ball was going to be thrown in about 3 or 4 seconds. You knew he was going to get rid of the football, and a lot of times they got rid of it a lot quicker than that. That enabled a lot of us to make a lot of interceptions back here. I'm going in this Hall of Fame only because our football team played so well and the guys in front of me played so well. You can't be a good linebacker with a bad front four, and our front four were the greatest in the game.
Green and Greenwood gathered the publicity, but Ernie Holmes and White White were just as good.
I was the attack defensive end, I guess. Because I like to think of myself that way. I mean, I would attack. Being the weak side end gave you an excellent vantage point because you had to blind side hit. One of those or 2 of those in the course of a few games sort of made up for all the action going away from you all the time.
Unfortunately, the considerable skills of number 63, massive Fats Holmes, seemed overshadowed by his notorious arrowhead hairdo.
Fats did that, for the publicity. And he was an incredible defensive tackle for about 2 or 3 years there. There was no better than Fats. In fact, a lot of guys said, on opposing teams, they said they'd rather face Green than Fats.
The playful bear-like persona of 10-time All-Pro Joe Green belied the Mean Joe image he fostered on a football field. His award-winning Coke commercial shattered the meanness myth forever.
I didn't know what I was getting into when I signed him to do the Coca-Cola spot. Didn't know what magnitude it would have. I was still trying to dispel the Mean Joe image. I was depicted as an animal-like character, but most of the time it was displeasing. When we did the commercial, it exposed me to not just football fans, but to the country. I've been a fallacy, for sure. I know personally I'm probably the nicest guy that could possibly play the game. Serious. You don't believe that, huh?
While Green was the Steelers' spiritual leader, ferocious Jack Lambert was the team's catalyst with his frenzied intensity at middle linebacker.
Double wing right. Ace!
Jack Lambert, without question, was the catalyst. He was the guy that turned us from a very good football team and defensive team to a great defensive team. A very inspirational player, a tough player. There just are no other Jack Lamberts. I've never seen anyone like him. And without Jack Lambert, I'm not sure we would have ever quite made it over the hump.
That's part of the game. That's the way the game's played. I made the comment, we should put dresses on quarterbacks. I got a lot of play out of that one, But I meant it. To me, football's a very emotional game. And if there's something I can do on a football field that might fire my teammates up, that's all well and good. But if anything, I try and lead by example.
On any defense, the members come from different directions and soon go different ways. They are only together for a few brief moments. It is not just talent and personalities that must mesh. The time must be right as well. The Steelers combined all those elements. And of all the great defenses, the swarming, smothering Steel Curtain left the greatest legacy, a showcase of 4 Super Bowl trophies, an accomplishment no other team can match.
If Pittsburgh's Steel Curtain was the defense of the 70s, the Chicago Bears have to be considered the defense of the 80s. The current Bears have preserved the ferocious image the team had during the 20s and 30s, when they were first known as the Monsters of the Midway.
3, 2, 1. The dream is reality. The Chicago Bears are world champions of football.
The 1985 Chicago Bears laid waste to the NFL behind a new defensive system called the 46. But while its mind was modern, its heart was in the 1950s. For the 85 Bears bore the legacy of the fabled Monsters of the Midway, a bad-tempered band of marauders who perpetrated more evil on the football field than the world has seen before or since.
They were the meanest, most difficult team I've ever played against anywhere in Chicago.
They were real tough and mean. They had players like Ed Sprinkle, Bulldog Turner, and people of that caliber who would go out of their way to decapitate somebody.
Although the Bears of the 50s never won a championship, their unique approach to the game left a more gripping impression than any title ever could.
But they were rough. Oh, they wanted to get you.
The Bears.
Oh, Ed Sprinkle, Christ, he'd cut you to ribbons. I mean, phew, with his cleats like that.
3 decades later, the spirit of Sprinkle was reborn in the body of Singletary.
We are the new Monsters of the Midway, and I don't like to use the word mean, but when I look at the film after we played, once we get out there on the field, you know, we are pretty mean.
It's like a pack of wild dogs. You know, if one of them's mean, they're all gonna be mean.
In Singletary's fiery stare, the Bears had the perfect expression of their intensity. And on every down, the captain's eyes sent the opposition his singular and unmistakable message.
I want to make sure that the guy on the other side of the ball realizes that I'm going to give him all I've got and realize that I wasn't trying to hurt him. And go back to the huddle and say, I don't want to go back that way. I don't ever want to do that again.
Singletary's partners in crime included linebackers Otis Wilson and Wilbur Marshall, number 58. It was the design of the 46 defense to put as much pressure as possible on the quarterback. The massive forward thrust of the line allowed the linebackers the freedom to create defensive opportunities on the fly, and the unmatched athletic ability of the Bears threesome thrived in its ideal home. As the Bears marched through the NFL revealed, the 46 unleashed not only physical gifts, but a special sort of temperament as well.
A defensive player is nuts, and the more nuts you can go within reason, maybe the better you'll become.
You know, anytime that Bear defense went out on the field, whether it's practice against their own teammates or what, everybody had to have their chin strapped tightened because they didn't take any prisoners.
After the regular season, the Bears were 15-1. The city of Chicago became a hub of toughness, centered around head coach Mike Ditka and his magnificent defenders. From the sidewalks of Michigan Avenue to the City Hall desk of the late Mayor Harold Washington, no one was safe from Bear mania.
Should we give him the finger? Yeah, man. Should we give him the finger? Yeah, man. Should we give him the finger? Yeah, man. We're number one. We're number one. We're number one.
But the Bears Bears' greatest glory was still to come. And after a 21-0 thrashing of the New York Giants in the divisional playoff, the Bears' dominance and arrogance were still on the rise.
They were cocky, arrogant. You know, they'd tell you what they're going to do to you, and as long as they did it, you know, I didn't consider that bragging.
I never seen the team 15-1 talk so much. You know?
A week later, the Bears rewrote history with a flourish of mythical proportion.
It has gotten colder steadily. And now the weather that everybody talked about. I wonder if they're finally arrived. Maybe they're cheering for the snow. I think they are. The weather that everybody from Chicago was hoping for has arrived.
Not to get theatrical, but I mean, how better can you write a script here for crying out loud?
Third down, 11 yards to go for Dieter Brock and company. Brock back to pass, the rush on. And hammered down. He got the ball. Picked up by Wilbur Marshall. Marshall running across the field. Go. That's 20. That's all the way. Touchdown. And a goal. The crowning jewel in their NFC championship.
Never before had a team put together back-to-back shutouts in the playoffs. And with pro football's most coveted prize at stake, the Bears made Super Bowl 20 their final step to greatness. The score was 46-10, making the 1985 Bears the most dominating postseason defense of all time. The Papa Bear, George Halas, had left them his heritage, and the new Monsters of the Midway brought Chicago a Super Bowl champion.
Undoubtedly, the Chicago Bears symbolized defense in its most devastating form. But in 1988, a new team joined the Savage Elite. The Houston tough-tackling bad boy secondary paved the way to the accurate nickname, the Houston Hitmen.
If you get real aggressive and you swarm and you gang tackle and you try to get as many people to the ball, then I think there's a group of people that really like that type of football, really love to see the hustle and the hitting. And then there's a group that would rather see a forward pass, one-on-one, 40 love you big savage type of game.
The Houston Oilers do not subscribe to the latter theory. To them, football is war, and the gridiron is a battlefield where no prisoners are taken. Like the Raiders of old, these Oilers like to engage in both physical and psychological warfare.
What we decided to do, our entire staff, Coach Glanville and the rest of us, sat down during camp and came up with the slogan that would be "Hit the beach," in terms of in the war when the boats came in and landed and the flaps came open, that everybody was shooting at you and the tough guys survived.
Hit the beach on the set. Let's go. Hit the beach on the set. Let's go. Set. Hit the beach.
Every play over there. Let's go, baby.
Yes, the Oilers do have a rather feisty nature about them, and no, they are not always diplomats when it comes to negotiating peace treaties.
Well, you know, they're kind of like the guy that always goes around saying how tough he is. You know, and instead of saying how tough you are when you're in a group of guys, they wait until they're pulling off in their car and they start saying, we're tough, we're gonna beat you guys up.
Hey, 48! You better get your stuff dusted, buddy!
We just have a bad reputation because we're a bunch of young crazies that like to live on the edge, but no, we're not dirty. I think we play within the rules. Every so often we get caught doing something wrong, but that's human nature.
I don't think it's anything we're doing wrong. I just think that we're playing the game the way it was meant to be played. For instance, if a running back is running the football and he's tackled by one guy and he's not down on the ground yet, well, it's okay for him to get hit by 4 or 5 other defenders. And I think because of that, people have accused us of being cheap shot artists and being the bad guys, but we're not necessarily bad guys. We're just very aggressive.
You know, they come close to some cheap shots at times, and I think they try to play. I don't know that they necessarily coach that. I think they definitely try to teach very aggressive football, and if there's any doubt in their mind, they're going to go ahead and take the, you know, give the lick. You know, I think you got to be very careful about that because that's a two-sided coin. You know, people have a way of policing themselves.
Filthy football. This guy tries to blow his knees apart in the last play. That's what's going on. He tried to blow his knees out.
Like warriors of old, the Oilers know that to live by the sword is to die by it. But more times than not in the past season and a half, they have been the predator, not the prey.
Stick it, Sean. Stick it, baby.
The Oilers' defense is a strike force that, as a unit, is definitely living on the edge. After earning playoff berths in 1987 and 88, they will likely continue to march to the beat of their own different drummer, in a band known as the Houston Hitmen.
Today, the Houston Oilers are the newest bullies on the block, the latest in a long line of intimidating tacklers. For the men whose mission it is to search and destroy, their roots go back to the mid-50s, when the New York Giants were the first defense with a real identity. The great Giant defense that I was privileged to be a part of owes them a debt of gratitude.
It is the most tribal and universal of football fan rituals. Yet there are those among NFL historians who believe that this battle cry was first chanted in the mid-1950s, originating from the rafters of New York's Yankee Stadium. In a game that climaxed the NFL's first season of nationally televised broadcasts, millions of home viewers heard the deafening roar and watched a very responsive Giant defense. The Giants' crushing championship win over the Chicago Bears was the beginning of an 8-year era that saw a whole new type of slugging power come to the fabled house that Ruth built. It began when head coach Jim Lee Howell added a young Tom Landry to his already talented staff of assistants. Landry's innovative mind melded together with men like Jimmy Patton, Andy Robustelli, Jim Katcavage, Rosie Greer, and Dick Modzelewski to produce the NFL's most dominant and difficult-to-detect defense of its day.
They were the first defensive team that all of a sudden started putting the good athletes over on defense. Up to that time, the better athletes, especially linemen, running backs, were on the offensive side. And all of a sudden, they started putting a little better athlete. Then also, they went and started studying offensive formations and what teams were doing, which is what Tom does.
It was a first. Landry and that group had put together a defense that had certain refinements to it that the offenses hadn't caught on to yet.
One of those refinements was the creation of the 4-3 defense, designed to take advantage of the instinctive skills of middle linebacker Sam Huff. In this defense, the job of the 4 down linemen was to keep Huff free of potential blockers, leaving him free to act as a rover, whose task was to be in the vicinity of the football. This scheme was one of a number of ploys the Giants successfully used to neutralize their main nemesis, number 32, Jimmy Brown.
Sam was basically the quarterback of that defense, and he had the flair to understand that he was in New York, so he became an instant celebrity by attaching himself to my legs quite often.
We hit him whether he had the ball or not. And we knew that we had to stop Brown because their offense was built around him. Why shouldn't you? You know, the man averaged 5.2 yards a carry lifetime.
We had to stop Jim Brown to beat the Cleveland Browns. And we were able to do it because of the defense we had in those days. We played what we call the coordinated defense. We were able to shut down the gaps for him where he couldn't find the gap to get through, and we were successful, probably better than anybody. No one stops him completely, obviously. He's too great a back to have that happen. But we slowed him down enough so that we ended up in the late 50s of being in a lot of championship games, and Cleveland wasn't.
In addition to capably handling their rivals from Cleveland, the Giants' defense also became highly proficient at putting points on the board. This mixture of creative stratagems and game day opportunism endeared this unit to their fans. Along with the public praise and adulation, media attention was for the first time devoted to a defense. Giant defenders were not portrayed as mindless brutes, but rather as a team-oriented group of friendly, thoughtful, and articulate men. This high-gloss treatment, however, did not wear well with all of their teammates.
There was a lot of animosity, a lot of jealousy between the offensive unit and the defensive unit, because the defense really came into prominence for the first time, I guess, in the history of pro football.
In those days, they didn't even introduce the defensive ball players. It was only the offensive ball players that were introduced before the game. And it was always, you know, ladies and gentlemen, number 16 from Southern California, Frank Gifford.
In those days, when Sam Huff was maybe making 8,000 or 9,000 and fighting Wellington Mara to make it 10, I might have been making 18 or 20. That didn't sit too well with the likes of a Sam Huff.
There was a little animosity about that because we were doing, on defense, we were doing an awful lot of playing, and we were holding teams, you know, to 6 points and to 3 points. And we went 3 games, I remember, and never scored a touchdown offensively, and we won 2 of them.
At one period, you know, when we'd come off the field, Sam might say, see if you can hold them, and we'll try and score on defense the next time around.
Despite the presence of any ill will, those who came into contact with this unit grudgingly agreed that they were pioneers in the effort to bring teamwork and intellect to defense.
The most intelligent defensive club in football, New York Giants. Every man knew his position, knew what he's supposed to do, knew where he's supposed to help out.
They played together probably as well as any team I've ever coached. They had just a sense of feel, you know, between each other. It was a good football team. It was good talent, but it wasn't really any better than some of the teams in those days. But their ability to play together and believe in each other, the way they believed in each other, was tremendous.
In 1960, Tom Landry moved on to coach the Dallas Cowboys, but the men he left behind went on to play in 3 more NFL championships. Although the Giants came up short in each of them, their defense performed bravely, particularly in the bitter defensive struggles against Green Bay in 1962 and Chicago in 1963. Ironically, a dynasty both began and ended with a title game against the Bears. But while one era was passing on, a new one was dawning. Various retirements and trades closed this chapter of defensive brilliance. But a symbolic seed was transplanted with Rosie Greer's transfer to the Rams, where he helped give celebrity status to Los Angeles' suddenly famous fearsome foursome. It was a start of a colorful age in professional football, where dominant defenses no longer lacked adulation and recognition. So whether they were called the Purple People Eaters, the Steel Curtain, or Doomsday, all of them owed a small debt of gratitude to a group of men who came together in New York's Yankee Stadium and who were simply called the Giants' defense.